Yeah, there you go. So Liz, Councillor McInnes has replaced Councillor Samara Bounds. Also in relation to the nomination for Ribble Valley, so we've been notified only today that Councillor Mark Hindle will not be able to continue with this, with actually sitting on this committee. But we have yet to be told of his replacement. So as soon as we get that, we'll let everybody know. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And then we'll move on to item number 6, which is the Police and Crime Commissioner's performance update. Commissioner, if you'd like to take us through your report, and then we'll pull you for any questions afterwards. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Chair. Obviously, we've got quite a detailed report in front of you. What I want to do is take the report through the order of the priority, so we can take questions on each of the individual priorities. I want to highlight some of the things that are going on within the office and the constabulary, and clearly any questions that the panel members have got around that, more than happy to address them at the time. So the priority number 1 is to prevent violence against women and girls. And I should have also said that I have got a number of my office team here who have the responsibility over the policy and the priority areas. So if there are any detail that is required, then I can invite some of the officers to provide that. Like I said, the violence against women and girls. We have just conducted a survey. Absolutely delighted with the level of response that we've got. Well over 4,000 responses. And that now is being analysed to identify the areas of concern and the improvements that we can make to providing support for victims of violence against women and girls in Lancashire. Really key for us to ensure that we are doing the right things, key priority for government and for ourselves within the office. But it's also important to have that liaison with the public across Lancashire. Specialist support and training. We have commissioned Paladin to provide specialist support for victims of stalking. We have them providing support for 55 stalking victims within Lancashire. You know, people think of it as being quite a niche area, but this is a serious problem, and having that specialist support and advice that we can provide is really key. Now, what it also says within the report is about the Susie Lamplugh Trust and their campaign to have 100 of the police workforce trained, and in Lancashire we are confident that we can get 400 of our officers receiving specialist training. So I think it's an indication, if you like, of how seriously that we as an office are taking the issue. The other one they mentioned is about the community fund. The community fund is money that comes from the proceeds of crime, the POCA funding, and we now have 4 allocations each year that are allocated towards the priorities that we have. We've allocated 177,000 to community groups and organisations across Lancashire who can provide support, 38 intervention projects, and it's more than that, because we know there's lots of good work that's going on across Lancashire, so it's providing funding for them to do even more of that good work. But what it also does for us is it creates an understanding across Lancashire of just how much work is going on. It gives us a network, it gives us an indication of the kind of issues that are brought to them that we can support in the future, and how we can develop the strategy that we have within Lancashire for tackling violence against women and girls. So I wanted to like I said, take them in order. So if there's any questions around the VOG strategy, happy to take them now, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Councillor Berry?
Yeah, I was just asking, will there be a targeted outreach approach to meet the gaps where people have been underreporting, you know, when the survey was conducted in the summer? I mean, can you visualise that now, or is it obvious from the data?
Okay, so just so I can understand the question. So will there be
targeted outreach in the areas where underreporting may be an issue?
Okay. I mean, as I've indicated, what we have at the moment is we've got a wide-ranging kind of response already. The work on that will be analysed. If there are, and it's about finding out the concerns members of the public have around the services that are being provided. Now, if that is one of the issues that is raised with us about concerns about underreporting, then clearly what we want this to do is to give us the information where we can then develop the strategy to actually deliver. And if that's one of the areas that is raised that we have a real concern about, the outreach. I mean, one of the reasons why we're supporting so many of the organisations across Lancashire is to make sure that we have got support right across the county. And so that's one of the reasons why we're doing it. But if it is an area, specific area that is raised with us, that is identified as being a problem, then we want to provide the best possible service we can, and we will do that.
Councillor Kashmi? Do you want to just pop your... Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted some clarification in how we're reaching to, how you're reaching out to hard to reach areas. For example, like women from the South Asian community. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I think I will bring in, we've got Becky to answer this, but I know that we have done an awful lot of work connecting with the groups and organisations within the BAME community across Lancashire. And a significant number of the projects that have been funding come from those areas and those organisations. But can I add a little bit more? Yeah, certainly. Then Anna can give you more detail.
In terms of the difficult to reach areas, the survey did highlight that we have a lower level of responses from certain difficult to reach areas, and that was the thinking then with the VOG Community Fund, where we've really captured those harder to reach areas and groups, and that those groups who've been successful in the funding can then work with those harder to reach groups. And there's been quite a strong kind of BAME applications that are really looking at innovative, original, bit more behind the scenes approaches to those harder to reach groups. And we haven't finished analysing it yet, but it certainly also, the survey's identified areas that we then need to work on targeting more so. But that's a kind of, there's so much data here that it will be a kind of staged approach to that. But in answer to that question, that's the VOG Fund's kind of really tackling that aspect of it.
Councillor Marinell?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Just a quick one. On the number 6, the survey of the 4,000 people, when are the results expected to come forward? How long will it take to collate them? And will they be coming forward at the next meeting that we have with you? Thank you.
Okay, I mean, the actual survey now has been concluded. We are now analysing the results of that in terms of the timescale. Anna, have you got an idea of that?
Yes, we are disseminating the results. We have a round table on, I think it's the 22nd of October. So we're then happy to bring the results of the survey to the next meeting, if that's what you would like. I think it'd be really interesting for the panel to hear it.
Councillor Lee?
Thank you, Chair. We're all aware of the current issues around illegal immigration, but that's obviously not a subject for today. I'm worried that people who are trafficked against their will are being lost in a media frenzy and other priorities. Many of these people are young women who are almost exclusively trafficked to carry out illegal or antisocial activities, such as forced labour, forced criminality or sexual exploitation. The EU-funded Vanguard project is working hard to reduce the levels in trafficking in human beings, but one issue is a lack of specific data. I would like to ask if any of these issues are being recorded separately as trafficking in human beings, THB, or simply put as down as their subsequent crimes.
Okay. I don't know the answer. Do you know the answer?
I can possibly try and answer it in terms of what we are doing in that area, in terms of those who are being exploited in kind of modern day slavery approaches. We have a round table where we're having a discussion cross-party around what it is that the constabulary have been doing in this area, and they've been very active in cracking down on locations such as the kind of Turkish barbers, the nail salons, looking at it from an exploitation point of view, looking at it from a money laundering point of view, looking at it from an immigration point of view as well.
Right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. At your June accountability meeting with the Chief Constable, you noted that violence against children the figures were on the increase. I just wondered, it's a serious subject, obviously, and I just wondered whether you'd had any follow-up with the Chief Constable on this. I mean, are we talking about historic offences? Are we talking about offences within the family, or are we talking about, you know, sort of online sort of prosecution of people, of young people, offensive messages given to young people online? Have you followed this up on the question of violence against children?
I'm not aware of this specific detail on that, Councillor. I don't know if anybody else has got an answer to that one.
We are aware that there's a significant issue in terms of violence against women and girls and children as well, and that's kind of captured in the whole violence against women and girls area of work. Online safety and concerns of safety are specifically really key, and an area that's on the rise massively. We've got issues with misogyny, and that's best tackled in terms of looking at education. The Commissioner has just recently commissioned what's called POLED, which is an educational resource that's delivered by, I don't know if you've heard about it, by police and teachers in primary and secondary schools. And we have a really high uptake across schools in primary and secondary schools.
Councillor Whip.
Thank you, Chair. Thinking about the figures in terms of violence against women and girls, is there any evidence to suggest that offences are committed by refugees disproportionate to the presence in the county?
Chair, I'm not aware of that being a specific issue. It's certainly not been something that's brought to be in from the constabulary as being one of the areas of concern that they have. I don't know whether they break them down, particularly in terms of refugees per se, whether that is one of the indicators. So I don't know whether they break them down for those categories, but certainly it's not been something that, with all the discussions that we have, that has been something that has been said that is a specific problem. So clearly there are lots of areas of concern, but in terms of whether the numbers of offences within refugees, whether that's disproportionately high, absolutely kind of no evidence and no indication. I do know that they are monitoring to make sure that if there are incidents that do do occur, that we would be made aware of those, because clearly over the summer months there's been heightened tensions, and we've obviously seen within other parts of the country, in Essex in particular, where an incident has occurred that then has created protests and all kind of reactions. And so I think if there was an incident that involved an asylum seeker, that would be something that I would be made aware of straight away, because that would be something that would be news and something that we would need to be prepared for. I've not been made aware of anything. So in that sense, I don't think we have a particular issue, but it is something that clearly we have to monitor and we have to look for, because of the way that would be kind of turned into something that could amplify the problems around migrants and asylum seekers. But I'm not aware of any issues.
Okay. Panel, any further questions on violence against women and girls priority? Yep, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I know it is a problem, especially that young people are getting their problems addressed. And at Wire, we did have the privilege of having a young PCSO who came to tell us of the work that she's doing at the hub in Fleetwood, where she's meeting young girls from the age of 8 up to the age of 18, and she can discuss with them their issues, their problems, and they can, sort of discuss it out with her in an informal situation, and they get the information from a young person, which I think is advantage. I mean, is this going to be, it's great that it's got it in Fleetwood, but there's other areas of Wire and there's other areas of Lancashire, and to me, it struck me as being a good initiative to be used to get to the heart of the problem and following it through. I mean, are we going to have a hub for young men, young boys and young men? Because there's messages got to be put across to them and to answer their issues. And I think that's one of the way of striking this issue of violence against the women and girls, that we have discussions with young people generally.
Councillor Billy, I mean, the 2 points you make then are very valid. You'll be pleased to know that the very person that you speak of was somebody that we had contact with ourselves, and Anna in particular, who impressed us in exactly the same way that she impressed you. And that gave us an idea of replicating that work, like you said, on a wider footprint. And with that, we've looked to speak with Constabulary about introducing specific dedicated PCSOs dedicated to domestic abuse. And we've got the agreement now to have, and we are in the process of going through the job specs for those positions, and we will have either 9 or 10 posts across Lancashire which will replicate that work. Now, in some ways it will be a pilot, because if we have 9 PCSOs across Lancashire, that's not going to change the world. But actually, it's for what you've said, the great work that one person can do, if you can demonstrate the success of that, you can then do that in other kind of areas and have a number of PCSOs that can do the same. You can develop good practice that can then be incorporated into all the work that the PCSOs do across the whole of the county. So we was impressed the same way you were, and we thought if only we could bottle that and take it and spread it across all of our PCSOs across Lancashire, and that is one way of doing this. So we are the only force in the country that I know of that will have dedicated domestic abuse PCSOs in place, and we want to make sure that then, and we can evaluate all the work that they do then to see how we can then take that forward and have all PCSOs doing that work. The other point you made was about young men, and it's a key part of the violence against women and girls is about the perpetrator programs and how we deal with the offenders and how we support the families. Part of what your DA PCSOs will do will be just that. Part of the actual funding for some of the organisations that we're talking about will do exactly that work, because it is about making sure that we're preventing as much as we can people becoming victims in the first place. It's about breaking the cycle of abuse, because the other thing that we do know is that in households where domestic abuse and violence takes place, around 90% of the young people within those households will be directly the victims of that abuse or witness to the abuse, and quite often they will then become the perpetrators of the future. Our focus is absolutely on breaking that cycle. It's about prevention as much as possible and learning from the victims of domestic abuse and can encourage them to come forward, get out of their situations earlier, but prevent people becoming victims in the first place. So absolutely we are dealing with that.
Councillor Marinell.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to follow up on the first part of the new the 9 to 10 PCSOs that are going to be coming forward, will these be extra duties for these PCSOs, or will they be totally focused on this new part? And if that's the case, will these new 9 to 10 PSOs be replaced by another 9 to 10 PSOs to take up the work that they were doing before? And if not, who's going to be doing the work that they were doing? Thank you.
So we're providing new funding for those PCSOs, so it's additional funding that will support new PCSOs. So they will be dedicated to this specific role. It has been one of the discussions with constabulary that we have had, because one of their suggestions was to have staff instead of PCSOs to provide the same kind of work, because their view was that if they are PCSOs, then they could be pulled into doing different work. So they could be abstracted onto other things. Now, they will be rotated and they'll be incorporated in the normal policing teams. And so, whilst they will be dedicated domestic abuse PCSOs, they will be rotated alongside others. So, if there is something, a big thing that's going on where you do need additional support for PCSOs, they will be available to do that. But in terms of the normal day-to-day job, it would be around specifically domestic abuse and working along. Because the advantage for me about working alongside other PCSOs and police officers is that way it's easier to share the good practice. The work that they pick up. You know, we have police officers, quite often, police officers are quite good at dealing with an initial situation. They'll go in, they'll get a call out, they'll go to a household, they'll deal with the problem, then they'll go off to the next job. What you want is somebody else to make contact with that family to find out what the circumstances were that led up to whatever the incident might have been, what support we can give to the family, what interventions might need to take place, and just spend a little bit of time understanding those issues so we can signpost people in the right way. So they will be dedicated, there will be an increase in number of PCSOs, but they will be rotated alongside other police officers and PCSOs. That way, I believe that then the information that they pick up and the work that they do can be passed on to other people. And I think that's the best approach of doing it.
Okay, if you want to take us through crime and antisocial behaviour, please.
Okay, next one. Yeah, thanks, Chair. I mean, the next one is tackling crime and antisocial behaviour. I mean, in terms of the issues that are brought to us from the public, it is about visibility, neighbourhood policing. It is the number one priority. It's what the public always asks for. Bobby's on the beat, visibility, the connection with the police. There has been the Safer Street Summer programme, which was an initiative of the government to make sure that we was absolutely focused on getting as many police officers out on the streets as possible, providing the support from the public, working with all the local authorities within Lancashire as a joined up approach, so that all the issues around antisocial behaviour, and particularly over the summer where there was really concern about the possibility of protests. I've got to say, in Lancashire, we've been really lucky and really good in terms of the relationships within the community. But we've had huge success with this because of the work that has gone into it. You know, we've had visits from the Home Office, visits from government ministers to come up and have a look at what we're doing in Lancashire, because they're really kind of pleased, if you like, by just the relationships between police and the community and the local authorities, and the good work that by working together, you know, you can provide the right support. So I'd say for Street Summer, again, in terms of what is raised with us as an office and me personally, e-bikes and scooters has been the real kind of hot topic, and the illegal use, I've got to say, because people have e-bikes that are completely illegal, and we don't want to stop them. But in terms of the illegal use of them, and scooters as well, you know, we know that they are used by drug gangs, they're used for antisocial behaviour. Really a blight on some communities. Now, what we have done is we now have the team of scrambler bikes that can get into places that we couldn't otherwise get to. The police have dedicated days where they focus all the resources with the local authorities, police, and even use of immigration officers as well, to focus on certain communities, go in, pick up any illegal e-bikes and scooters they can. Over the last few months, we've had 750 of the e-bikes and scooters that have been taken off the streets and scrapped, because in Lancashire, they use the Road Traffic Act. So in some places, they use antisocial behaviour orders. If you use those, then you can take them off people, but you've got to give them back. In Lancashire, with the Road Traffic Act, they scrap the bikes to make sure there will be no longer a problem. It's sending out the message to the people that use them illegally not to do so. The evidence is that we are seeing less of them on the streets, and certainly, as in the report, it says 150 illegal e-bikes and e-scooters removed in Preston alone, and that's over the last few weeks. Now, I know in Preston, if I speak to the local police officer there, they will say visibly the number of people using them has really dropped, because people they're getting the message, because previously people thought there was no consequence. Now they know there is. The police will pursue them, they'll stop them, and they will scrap those bikes. So that I'm really pleased that we are able now to actually do something about that. Another one that I'm highlighting there is working with the Premier League. The Premier League have they've got some funding. It's also about the use of the brand of the Premier League as well. In Lancashire, we only have one Premier League football team, Burnley, but actually it's all football clubs. all football clubs that we have in Lancashire are all a part of this. We're the only county in the country where every one of our football clubs, and they have community trust where the football club works with young people. It's about a way of engaging with young people, but then they go through a process of working with those young people, doing diversionary activities, building up confidence, giving them a different outlook, stopping them getting involved in crime and criminal behaviour. And we have 9 football clubs. So not only all the football clubs that are in the Football League, we also have Morecambe and AFC Fylde, who are in the National League. And we also have Wigan, which isn't within Lancashire per se, but they do an awful lot of work in Skelmersdale and West Lancs. We have every one of those signed up. We have funding that we put in from our office, and we have over half the funding that the Premier League have set aside nationally is coming into Lancashire because of what we are doing. So we've got a great relationship with them, with the football clubs, with the community trust, and it's a great hook to get those young people involved in different activities, get them off the streets and give them a different outlook. So that's why I've highlighted that one, Chair. And other than that, I'm quite happy to take any questions around that as a priority.
Thank you, Commissioner. Councillor Marinell, do you want to kick us off?
Thanks, Chairman. I've got 3 questions, if that's okay.
Okay.
We'll do them one by one. Number 20 on e-scooters and e-bikes. Noticing the report, it says 150 taken off the streets in Preston.
Yep.
What other areas are being monitored and how's it being monitored? Because I know in Wyre, my ward's in Poulton in Wyre, our problem is not good and it's probably getting worse. I'm seeing more and more. And also in Fleetwood, they're having problems as well, and some in Cleveland. So I'm just wondering, what kind of work are you actually doing, and what monitoring are you doing, or what you're putting on the ground to get rid of it as well, please?
Okay. In terms of the use of the scrambler bikes and working with the local authorities, they do that across the whole of Lancashire. So what happens is, and what happens in the process of the local policing teams, they have daily meetings where they identify the biggest issues that they have within those communities. So they monitor that every single day, the challenges that they face in Fleetwood, Poulton, everywhere else within those divisions. And then with the resourcing that we have, and it's not just about the scrambler bikes, they use the drone teams as well. In Preston, they even have the use of the fixed wing aircraft came over to use to identify properties where the e-bikes was going into, to monitor those so the police could make the raids on those properties. They're doing that all over Lancashire, so wherever they believe, and they're doing it throughout the county, in nearly all towns within Lancashire, they have had these kind of exercises where they've done that already. But that's the way they do it. They monitor on a daily basis the biggest issues that they've got, then they coordinate that, and they request the support from whatever it might be from the drone teams, the scrambler teams, to deal with the problems. And so that's the way the police monitor it. It is on the scale of the problem. They put the request in, and I know there's a lot of enthusiasm within the force now to actually deal with this as a problem, because previously I think there was a level of frustration that people was being seen to get away with it. Now, through the use of the Road Traffic Act, through the support with the scramblers, they can get to places that they never could before. And so they're constantly monitoring where the best use of these resources go, where they will make the most difference, and actually then they will go in and they will do that work.
Thanks for the answer. Poulton has some really, really good, well, the whole of Wyre now, all the major towns have excellent CCTV. So it's easy for the police to monitor where it's happening, and literally it's in the town centres, so they can see all of this, but nothing really seems to be happening. So I'd be interested to maybe have some dialogue with your office and see what's going on there. Be interested to do that. My second question is 21 on the Premier League. Could you elaborate on what kind of work they're actually doing? The report's a bit vague. It doesn't sort of really say what they're actually doing. They've got £40,000 per club, and where's the money being spent? What sort of outreach programs are they actually doing to tackle ASB?
Yeah. Yes, Chair. I mean, in the report, there it talks about targeting young people under 18, and it talks about interventions and positive engagement. The football is only one aspect of it. The football and we talk about young girls as well as young boys. The football is an aspect. The brand of the Premier League is a way to make a connection with those young people. But the range of work they do can be from educational. It will be talking through with those young people about the issues they face. And it can be about the social skills, improving the support that we can give for that. It will be about working with those young people to open up kind of opportunities. I know in Fleetwood, they do a lot of work on the Champions programme, and Wyre Borough Council have been very, very supportive with the Clear Hole Build and the Champions kind of programme with that. The Premier League is very similar, the Premier League approach, to that kind of work, which is about the engagement with young people, about self-esteem, about the social skills, about education around health, and it is about a whole range of activities that they can work with those young people to get them off the streets and give them a different direction. They're focused on particularly young people that will be on the cusp of getting involved in criminal behaviour, people that can be referred into them. And so the working is, in my view, and that's where the value is the right kind of cohort. You know, engaging with young people as early as possible, finding some connection that we can with those young people, and find ways of diverting them away from crime and criminal behaviour and giving them a different outlook. Sports is one aspect of it, but there's a range of different activities that they provide. I don't know whether, is there anything else you want to add? Steve might be.
I think the success of it is that it's tailor-made, so whatever the child wants to do, it can be on a kind of one-to-one basis, but I'll let the expert speak.
You need a mic.
Good afternoon, everybody. It dovetails into something which I think the Commissioner will speak about a little bit more, which is the Young Futures Partnership Prevention Panels. But basically, this is to try and get children and young people at the earliest opportunity in what is usually the journey into a career in criminality. So these are the children and young people who come from criminal families, who are at risk of domestic violence, because it will show that domestic violence, if a child witnessed that, they are 50% more likely to end up being an habitual knife carrier. So when we're looking at the specific themes, they are very much catered to that child or young person, for the reason being, very often they're referred in via the educational route, but it can go in through the police. The referral form is quite simplistic. We are just up to having the mid-term reports from each club, so we'll see the numbers and the outcomes and how they're looking. Most of it follows the themes. I don't know whether anybody's aware of the Youth Endowment Fund and the tools that they suggest. So it's high impact, as the Commissioner said, around. It's not, sports mentoring does work very well, but it's also one-to-one mentoring. There can be nutritional values. Positive role models is massive. So breaking that chain of their role model being an older brother, an older gang member, and replacing that with somebody in the community who does great community work. So it's a tried and tested model. The football clubs are all ensconced in it, and that's why we've got so much funding, more than any other part of the country. It is something, but we are hopeful will work very well. I can't give you any results yet because we've not got them, but I will ensure that those are shared. Thank you.
My last question, I know Fleetwood Community Trust do a huge amount of work and they do some fantastic stuff, so yes, yeah. I'm pleased about that. My last one is number 31 on rural crime. You'll be aware that Wyre is half urban and half rural, so it's quite important for me, this one. You say in the paragraph here that there's a potential event coming up and then a possibility of convening stakeholder roundtable discussions. Can you elaborate on that? Will some meeting be taking place and what will they consist of?
Okay. Do you know where we are with the real event?
There is one.
Steve again, go on. Steve, where are we up to?
Yeah, so on the 11th of November at Mittenfold Hall Hotel, we're having a rural crime, heritage, wildlife crime conference. There's already over 100 delegates registered to attend. The National Farmers Union are presenting at that up-and-coming conference, and hopefully as a result of that we're going to get a product that we can look at redeveloping our relationship with the National Rural Crime Network. So it is very much all moving in the right direction. We're looking at that being a very, very good conference and us getting something to take from that, to take away to everybody in Lancashire who is having problems, because we are aware of them. Hopefully everybody's going to come together. The speakers are all booked, and we will get a product that we can take away and see how we can work that.
And is that open to councillors or not, or is it just a closed meeting?
I don't think anything's a closed meeting, but I will have to take. No, I'm sure it's not a closed meeting. Why would it be? If you would like, I can share the link with you. I'm sure we can.
I think there's a few rural councillors in here that will be quite happy to go to that.
Yeah, I'll ensure that the link for the event is shared. Thank you.
Yeah, it's just because we have a rural crime working group as well, where we are working on quite a few things. We've had meetings with various members across.
Absolutely, I can understand.
So to join in with that and to try and sort of pool some resources and results and sort of feedback that we've had, that could be very worthwhile.
Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Stay there, Steve. Just in case there's more questions.
Okay. We pass that away.
We've got Councillor Desai.
Thank you. The questions around, so the antisocial behaviour has always been a problematic area, and when tackling antisocial behaviour in a particular area, there is always a danger of moving it into an adjacent area. I'm just wondering what the challenges are and how that's been tackled.
It's something we are absolutely aware of. I know it's something that Councillor Whip has raised in the past. It's something that I've been asking questions on. But I've got to say, in terms of the response so far, is that dispersal hasn't been an issue. The work that we've got going on in Clear Hole Build and tackling the antisocial behaviour has been absolutely reducing the numbers and not shifting it on from one place to another. So there's been real success. There's been real success, and at the moment, no evidence whatsoever that actually where you concentrate your efforts, all you're doing is moving it from one place to another. Because, like you said, if that was the case, then it would be like whack-a-mole, wouldn't it? All you're doing is dealing with an issue here and it pops up somewhere else. I'm told that so far we're not seeing that. We're seeing real reductions in antisocial behaviour, and that is a real success. But we are watching that. just in case, you know, because the last thing we want to do is just move something along from one place to another. So far, no evidence.
Commissioner, I should have asked at the last point you mentioned in the report around work with the National Farmers Union. I'm just wondering, has that progressed, or what specific work are you looking at? Is that around sort of vehicle crime or farms, or?
I think it's something that we're working on. We have worked with the Farmers Union in the past, certainly on the rural crime and the activities. Really kind of important. We're working with the farmers. I think at the moment we've made contact with them, and I think it's just in its embryonic stage to rebuild that relationship. I don't know if, Steve, you've got anything further to add to that?
Yeah, one of my colleagues, Eleanor Adshead, who works tirelessly in the office, she has made contact with the NFU. They are coming to the conference, so it's hoping that once we actually make the physical connection, we can build on that. We are aware that there is the National Rural Crime Network, and we're going to develop our input into that. So it is very much work in process, but it's a lot of valuable work has been done by Eleanor in that respect. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor, Councillor McInnes.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to ask about business crime. And the reason I'm asking is in Rosendale, our neighbourhood policing team recently held a meeting with what they referred to as stakeholders in the local area. And unfortunately, the meeting actually caused a lot of upset because a lot of businesses weren't invited, and it's actually caused more problems than it's actually solved.
Oh,
and,
okay.
you know, I would just make a plea that if we are involving businesses, that we invite absolutely everybody. I'm not sure where the list actually came from, but, you know, it's not a good start. I don't know if it's part of your Safer Business Partnership or if it's just something that they're doing off their own bat. But I would just make a plea for everybody to be consulted.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's unfortunate. I mean, developing relationships with the business community is key for what we're trying to do. We've had a number of events already, and as you've indicated, it can be really challenging. We've tried to use, you know, we have now joined up with all the chambers of trade across Lancashire so that we're a member, so we have the details and we can use the networks that they have. We've used the LANPAC, the Lancashire Partnership Against Crime, because they have a really wide network of businesses that are linked up to the work that they are doing, and we are part of that, and I'm a director within LANPAC. But there are so many businesses, and to make sure that you've got every single one invited or engaged is in some ways it's an impossible kind of challenge. It's so important that we try and provide the support that they need. Again, we've got the strategy within Lancashire. We've got the Op Vulture working with some of the bigger businesses, which is Lancashire's strategy around tackling retail crime, shoplifting, and protecting shop workers. We've had some real significant success with that and the convictions. But again, not everyone wants to be involved with that, you know, so it's constantly trying to update the number of businesses you can work with, but from ourselves, we've got a real commitment. So if there are ones that are falling through the net, we will try and ensure that we can pick them up. If there are people that are complaining to you, Liz, send them on to our office and we'll add them to our list. Does anyone want to add anything? Go on then.
Councillor, just to confirm, this particular business partnership hasn't actually been established yet, so I'm guessing it's nothing to do with us per se. It might be the police running that engagement event, but going forward, that's absolutely a consideration to ensure we capture everybody's views. So we're actually looking at that very intently at the moment to ensure that we capture as many of those businesses as possible. How we're doing that, I can't disclose at the moment, but we will come back to you when that's established, and it's something that's very, very important to our governance arrangements going forward. So just wanted to clarify.
And Commissioner, I was just going to ask on that, is that the point 28, the proof of concept that's been planned, and so that's due to come in the next few weeks?
Yes, around December time.
December.
Hopefully for the next panel.
Okay, brilliant.
Some more information.
Thank you. Vice Chair, Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Chair. We frequently hear on the question of road safety, frequent accidents on the M6. You know, from fairly regularly, we're now hearing of closures because of these serious accidents, lorries crossing the carriageway, etc., etc. Consequently, obviously, people are seriously injured, but also traffic is redirected in certain cases into our town centres, and that's the last place where heavy vehicles should be going. Now, I realise that you've discussed this issue with the Chief Constable, and that you've recently sort of written to the Transport Secretary. At a local level, the answer seems to be that we have average speed cameras on the M6. I just wonder, given the seriousness of this and the regularity of all these accidents, has there been any follow-up on this so that we can get this problem sort of sorted as best we can? Because it is a problem, and there must be an answer to alleviate the number of incidents and accidents on this major highway.
I mean, there's no magic answer to this, because it is just the increase in the volume of traffic. You know, the issue between on the M6 between the M55 junction and the M61, M65. You know, you've got all those motorways coming together, and the increase in the volume of traffic just means that it snarls up, and you get the incidents that you're talking about. Any small accident, because of the volume of traffic, just means that everything seems to break down. It is something that we are actively looking at with the Highways Agency. The speed cameras and reducing the speed is, I know, one of the actions that they are looking at. But I know with that there's real concern whether that will by itself cause more problems. I think there's no magic answer with this one. You know, from the police's perspective, the running of the motorway is the Highways Agency, and you know, I mean, from the police's perspective, it's about trying to deal with the accidents and get the motorways up and running again as soon as possible. But from the impact on the business of the country, we can't just keep on allowing that road to be impacted in the way that it has. So I know that all the agencies are looking at solutions, and that might be one of them, but I'm not sure we've got a timescale for that. Anna's writing down a multi-agency approach. It is a multi-agency approach. It's something that all the agencies are looking at. I just can't think of it. I mean, if that was the easy solution, we would do it. But I know there are some of the agencies that are saying that reducing the average speed would actually cause more problems. So I don't think we've got an agreement on that. But we'll keep on looking at that, and as soon as we've got an answer, I'll bring it back here. It's as frustrating to me, because I get stuck in that traffic more often than not, and I think they wait for me before they have the accident. So I know how difficult that is, and if I had a solution, then we would deal with it straight away. But it's very, very difficult.
Point. Have you received a response from the Transport Secretary to your letter? Because it is a serious issue, and it's up to his department to look into this, to be quite honest.
It's one of them that when they say they're looking into it, the timescale, the wheels of government don't work that quick, and so we've got to wait until they've met with all the people they need to do that, and then come back with some kind of solution. If you're expecting a quick solution, then we've never had one yet, but we live in hope. As soon as we get something back, I'll keep you updated.
Thank you. Councillor Berry?
Do excuse me, I'm full of a cold, but I think I'm wanting to ask a question around county lines. It's just a new emerging issue in my district, and I've done a bit of research in others around proliferation of children's homes, particularly to house children are challenged by having involvement in illegal activities, and it's just that there's lack of transparency really, which is holding back collaboration, because the first the police know about it is when something bad happens, and it'd be imperative really that there's something more proactive done rather than reactive, and without being, not for everyone to know, being supplied with information about the young people at risk, it leaves them vulnerable because the police aren't there to back things up.
Yeah. Chair, it's a nice segue into the next priority, because on priority 3, which is to get tough on serious and violent crime, the first one we've got highlighted there is County Lines Intensification Week. County Lines is a big issue in Lancashire, as it is everywhere. As it indicates there, we've been focusing on tackling the cross-border gangs that come into our communities within Lancashire, quite often from Manchester and Merseyside, but even Birmingham and London. They'll come in to Lancashire, West Yorkshire as well, and exploit young people. As we know, young people are groomed and then exploited and put into the gangs with the county lines to sell drugs and distribute drugs on the streets of Lancashire. So it is about that work, focusing on it, making sure we are taking those young people. Again, it's part of the work that we do with the Premier League, and a lot of the work that we're doing trying to do the early intervention to get young people away from the gang activities, away from the criminal activities. But what you'll find with some of the organised crime groups is that as soon as you take one young person away, another young person will take their place almost immediately the day after. And so, and with the work that the police do, they want to take out the organised crime groups themselves, rather than target the individuals that are dealing the drugs. And that's why you will often find when we have the big court cases with the drug gangs, there will be 5, 10, 15 members of the gang that are taken to court, because that's what they're aiming for. They're aiming to take out the real big dealers themselves. But yeah, a lot of work going on with the county lines, and like I said, it's highlighted there that actually we focus on different parts of the county, really intensive work going on, taking young people out and making sure that the interventions are in place.
The only difficulty you've got there is if they're in private residences, that you've not got that information about who, it's great having a relationship with Lancashire County Council, for example, with their children homes out in the districts, but it's the proliferation of outside agencies coming in, and the contracts with Lancashire contracting out to agencies in Rochdale and Oldham, so it's quite a wide area, and 1 in 10 of our children in these homes are running away as well and extremely vulnerable. And it's that having that backup, like a PCSO and a CBN in a village. Not well. There will be soon. We will be soon aware, but it'd be great if there was a lot more transparency to enable proactive relationships to develop rather than it being down to someone, a young person assaulting somebody in the vicinity, which has occurred quite recently.
Yeah, Chair, I mean, Chair, the local policing team work really closely with the local authorities. You're right about some of the issues with some of the children's homes that do pop up without anyone really being aware of them being there until problems occur. It is part of the problem with Lancashire specifically because we tend to have cheaper property. Big issue within Blackpool with the number of young people in the care of the local authority, not just Blackpool young people, but young people placed within Blackpool from all over the country, because buying a property in, like I said, certain towns within Lancashire and paying for the staff can be fairly cheap, and that's why they seem to target Lancashire more than elsewhere. But you're right, it would be great if when people opened these homes that there was an obligation on them to work with the local authority and work with the police, but quite often the first time the police know they are there is when they get called out to an incident, young person missing from the home or something going on within that community. So it is an ongoing problem. I don't think it's getting worse than necessarily it used to be, but like I said, with a lot of the work that we're trying to do on the prevention side and the partnership approach, that at least gives us something to do when we work with those young people, give them an alternative.
If we just, before we move on to priority 3 fully, Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask the Police and Crime Commissioner if under crime and antisocial behaviour as well, but also about rebuilding trust and confidence, could we have a look at a more consistent approach to unauthorised traveller encampments, which have been causing us a great deal of bother? You know, we've got a rural task force. Task forces to chase people on scooters, brilliant, love them all, they're absolutely great. But I feel like this is an area that we need to really have a look at. For context, we had an incursion onto some of our football pitches, which we as a council take action on straight away every time, but it could be 4 or 5 days before we can do anything. Police can give a direction to move on the day. If they need to, but they caused damage to gain access to a field, put a football tournament in jeopardy, they damaged the field. Thankfully, police decided they then could use the powers to move them on because of the damage, but they didn't tell us as a local authority, so when the travellers moved, without our officers to shepherd them, they promptly broke into a further secured premises just down the road, which meant we had to start all of our legal processes and welfare checks again at great cost, and another area to fix. And then mere weeks later, the same family returned at another venue, broke into a football tournament area, and we had to cancel a football tournament for hundreds of children, their families, local businesses. There was damage, there were reports of people defecating in children's sandpit, unknown adults showering in children's changing room, damage to the pitches. But on that occasion, no action, and the tournament was cancelled, a huge clean-up. So what I would ask the Police and Crime Commissioner, if you can have a look at a task force, or just to give us a more consistent approach. Now, we understand there's always going to be a call on police resources somewhere, but sometimes we're waiting 5 days to try and move some of these families, and surely we can get the travellers moved before that sometimes, because I'm sure by the end of a 4 or a 5 day stay, the number of antisocial phone calls to the police will have gone through the roof.
Yeah, Chair, with that, what I'll do is if you can give the details to a member of my staff afterwards, we'll look at the specific issues in some detail and whether we need to do something in terms of policy or just have a look at the police's response to what has happened in these incidents, I don't know. We'll have to have a look at that in more detail. But what we need something to really get under the skin with, get the details of what's been going on, and then we can take it back to the constabulary, and then we can hold them to account for how well they've dealt with it or haven't.
I do understand that on the second incident that there was an incident in Blackpool that was being looked at, but it's very difficult for us as councillors to talk to our residents when they got rid of them there and we've not got rid of them here, and it is very difficult to balance that up. So if we could have a policy of look at a policy, but yeah, I'm happy to supply the details. Thank you.
Councillor Marino.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just a quick one on just going back to Councillor Berry's point on county lines. The 69 people that were arrested, how many of those were the young people who were being exploited, and how many were the criminal bosses that were actually involved in that? And just a point, £20,000 in the big scheme of things where drugs are concerned doesn't seem a lot of money.
Chair, I don't know if, Steve, do you have any idea of the...
I've not got the numbers, but I can speak around it.
Okay.
Thanks, Councillor. Unfortunately, I've not got the numbers that you require regards the actual number of arrests of how many were children. I can explain and pick up on the other councillors' points around some of the work going on around county lines. But getting back to the £20,000, it will probably allude to the fact that these are, in the pyramid scheme of things, what you would refer to as runners. That is a county lines term, North West Rock you refer to as, which are usual exploited children, so they would not be trusted with large amounts of drugs. So it would allude to the fact that because of those recoveries, these are the lower end. Having said that, a lot of work goes on with the phone work. Actual drug recoveries don't actually prove an offence as much as the phone work. So you can actually get a criminal conviction without a large amount or any drugs. I've worked on drug cases where that's been the case in the past. So even though that looks a relatively small number, it doesn't mean that criminal convictions won't have been brought about and those have been very successful. Before I move to the other councillor, I'll find out exactly what sort of the demographics are and report back through the Commissioner, if that's okay. Just on your previous points as well, of which you brought so many good previous points. We are in constant contact with the North West Regional Organised Crime Unit, both the County Lines team, DI Norton, and Sergeant Leanza, who is part of the TOEX team, which is the Targeted Organised Exploitation team. As a result, we have catered our referral process into the Young Futures prevention panels and also the Premier League schemes. It is a very large landscape, and I wouldn't be so bold to say that we have got all angles covered, because I know we haven't. It is a difficulty that we do get children and young people from other localities, but we also take they also take children from Lancashire. There is a real possibility that those can be lost. We have arranged some training from North West ROCU, which has been open to all different kinds of services, so people can see the stark warning signs when a child or young person is involved in county lines, but I can't promise you that some will not fall through the net. We are trying our best to get, and it's usually the children who are outside of education, outside of training, that do fit the criteria, and unfortunately the criminal gangs are very, very good at highlighting these children and targeting these children, and as the Commissioner says, we will save one, but then the crime bosses will not say, fair dues, we've had a good run. They will try and recruit another child within hours. We're aware of all these. All I can say is we work with all the relevant organisations to try and make that as difficult as possible in Lancashire. Thank you.
Okay, we've got a foot in both priorities. Can I just check with the panel if there's any further questions on tackling crime and antisocial behaviour? Okay, we'll move fully into priority 3 for getting tough on serious violent crime. Is there anything further, Commissioner, you'd like to outline?
Okay, thanks, Chair. I think in some ways we'd already moved on to it, because this was specifically around that in the county lines, and in some ways the Op Warrior. Now, in county lines has been mentioned. The Op Warrior is the Lancashire's a strategy around organised crime groups, and again, county lines and the organised crime groups go together. The targeting some of the cannabis farms that are being developed within some of the properties in Lancashire. They're looking at that quite significantly, working with some of the landlords, because you'll find that landlords will rent out properties to gangs unknowingly. I'm not saying they would do it knowing that it was going to be used for a cannabis farm, but then you will also find that the people that are involved, there will be trafficked in, and you will have the anti-slavery teams involved as well to try and have the interventions. A lot of work that's going on within Lancashire around that, county lines, the organised crime, the clear hole build, which again is something that we initiated within Lancashire, firstly within Fleetwood, support of Wyre Council within that, and Regenda, very importantly, because, and it's spread now, we've got schemes for the clear hole build also now in Preston and also in Nelson and Briarfield, because of the success of the way it's been working. What that does is tackles areas where there's been significant antisocial behaviour, drug gangs, gang activity, problems within the local community, areas where the local community are all losing confidence with the police to deal with some of the real kind of issues they have. And by working together on a partnership prevention approach, then where there are households that have been identified where there are significant issues and drug dealing activities, they can evict those individuals, take control of those properties. They can put banning orders in place to ban people from coming even back into the town or the local area. And where you've got families involved, that really means separating up members of the family as well. And that's important because it puts a fear factor within the families, because they know that their family members won't even be allowed back in the town to see them. Working with the young people that we've mentioned about the county lines, young people that are groomed or coerced into being involved in some of the drug dealing, the interventions that can be put in place to divert them away, giving them social skills and showing them a different way forward to make a living other than being involved in some of the gangs that we've got. Real success at the moment. One of the issues has been mentioned, does it just displace the antisocial behaviour, drug dealing from one area to the next? Absolutely no evidence so far that that is the case. And so we're trying to replicate that. You do need that partnership approach. You do need the support from the local community, and you do need to make sure that you've got enough police officers and interventions in place to make it work. So in Preston, as it's mentioned about the Westview Leisure Centre, the area around Deepdale and New Hall Lane, really taking off, really getting the local businesses and the partners involved in that, really pleased with the way that's developing. Likewise, in Briarfield and Nelson, real good engagement with the local community there. So this is a way going forward, something that is being initiated within Lancashire, support from the local community and local authorities, that actually is really making a difference. We're constantly monitoring it because we know we're putting so much investment into making the changes that we need to know that it works. and the evidence really is so far that it does work, because you're not only removing the problem away from that community, you are putting orders in place to stop people coming back in. And a real threat, because a lot of people, you know, they're close-knit families, and you're saying to them they can't come back into the local area. That is a real deterrent from other people going along that path. And so really pleased with the way that's working so far, and that covers many of the policy, if you like, around serious violent crime. We'll just mention quickly the Young Futures Prevention Partnership Panel. That's something that, again, we're bringing a lot of people together, attended by many people, many of the partners we've got across Lancashire. And again, it's what we want to try and encourage and bring together, that partnership approach, because it's only the partnership approach that can really make the difference. The police on their own can't do it. It is about a whole range of agencies working together.
Thank you, Commissioner. I've got Councillor Whibb.
Thank you, Chair. Clive, you're talking about clear hold build, and you mentioned that that's an initiative that is currently underway, Nelson and Briarfield. Thinking about the clear hold build areas that have been in place for longer, could you say whether you have full confidence that tackling OCGs in this way will actually result in the main people within those criminal gangs being convicted, being sent down and being taken out of circulation? I appreciate, as far as Nelson and Briarfield is concerned, it's relatively early days, but it appears that the people being addressed are relatively low level, and I haven't yet seen any evidence that the heads of these criminal gangs are being directly tackled. So is your confidence misplaced? And in terms of drug supply, there was an operation a little while ago now in Burnley that resulted in the ketamine supply being closed down for a short period. That didn't appear to have any impact on the street level price of ketamine, which indicates to me that, the supply wasn't significantly restricted, and that the drug was still freely available. So do you carry out any monitoring of street level drug prices to see whether this enforcement activity has any impact on those supply lines?
Chair, I mean, I will bring in Stephen in a second, but what I will say is the challenge about stopping any drugs within communities within Lancashire and stopping ketamine or cannabis completely is almost an impossible challenge. What you've got to do is you've got to do as much as you can, because otherwise, if you didn't believe that the clear hold build would make a difference, then you would just do nothing, and you might as well legalise it because we're giving up. We can't give up, and the situation around some of the major dealers, it is a challenge to identify the major players, the people that live in the big houses within the Ribble Valley, or even Dubai and places like that, who coordinate all the gangs underneath them. But absolutely, the police are, you can almost guarantee they will be aware of all the individuals involved. It is the challenge then around the regional organised crime unit to get the evidence, to get the convictions. And I won't pretend it's easy, because it isn't. But they will know who the players is. And we do get updates. We'll get a quarterly update in terms of the different challenges within each part of the Northwest, the major players, the individuals, who they are, the convictions that we've had and the successes they will give us updates on, the different kinds of drugs that and the challenges they pose. You know, from my perspective, it is about the consequences within the local community, the antisocial behaviour, the dealing of drugs and the problem that poses, the criminality that goes on when people are committing crime to feed the habit, whatever the habit might be. Dealing with that side of it, we absolutely have the regional organised crime unit will deal with the wider organised crime, identify those individuals and pursue them wherever they may be. Similar to, in some ways, at the same time, we get updates on people who would be a terrorist threat as well. You know, so they're looking at all those kind of the counter-terrorism, the threats that we face, the organised crime groups, the activity that's taking place within the county and how their approach to that. I'm not sure they monitor the individual price of drugs to see whether it makes a difference. I don't know that they would do that, but they do look at the consequences and the antisocial behaviour and the impact on the local communities. And like I said earlier, they have briefings every single morning of every day for the incidents that are occurring within those local communities, who is causing problems, what they may be, who they need to target that day, where they need to allocate the resources of the policing. Every single day they will be doing that. So they will be monitoring what is occurring in those communities. However, drug prices I'm not aware of. But I'll bring in Steve because he'll have more detail than I have.
Thanks, Commissioner. Thanks, Councillor. In response to your question, I've not got the knowledge of what the police are doing, and I would never have that knowledge because it will be quite a covert operation. However, all I can say is, speaking around police investigations, very often you will have a pyramid, and very rarely will you go for the top of the pyramid, first of all, because you won't have that. Basically, they're very good at what we do. So there will be decisions that's made at that level of to which of the pyramid they are picking off, which may look like, and I know people in the community speak to a lot, so I know that you will know that these are perhaps not the names you might expect, but it may well be the fact that they are picking most people off from the pyramid who will provide them with the evidence that will get the bigger fish, if you like. With regards to the ketamine and the market values, drugs doesn't quite work like that with market values, and I can speak as an ex-drug squad officer, albeit from a different place. In 1997, when I was a drug squad officer, you could buy a bag of heroin for £10 in Leigh. Today, you can buy a bag of heroin for £10 in Leigh. There's been no market value, basically. Market, as in other things, it doesn't exist as much in the drug world. And ketamine, most ketamine from the United Kingdom comes in via India, which is a place of source. Now, just because some warrants have been done in any place in the United Kingdom, that will not stop ketamine coming in through these same routes from India. It is, though, and it's funny you should mention ketamine, it's the only drug that has seen an increase in usage since 2015. It's actually trebled in use. It is very much the drug of a young person's choice. It's a very worrying drug, and not just on the effect it has on the bowel and bladder, as I'm sure you know, but also on mental health, which is strange because it is probably a drug chosen to let young people deal with the mental health. So what would, it's a very long-winded answer and I do apologise. What we are trying to do, and I do work with several drug associations throughout the county, is we're trying to look at, yeah, the police can shut down the vendors, but then a vendor will open up because a marketplace still exists. We're looking at trying to sponsor and fund a lot of intervention issues around ketamine use in particular, because it is very much, as I say, it's the only drug that has seen an increase, trebled. Every other drug, cocaine, heroin, has seen a decrease nationally. Ketamine is the only one that has seen a massive marked increase. So there is a lot of work, Councillor. I can't give you the answers around whether we're missing the bigger picture with the police, but as soon as we find out, we'll let you know. I think it's just a case of hold your nerve and see where we are.
Thank you, Clive and Steve. The part of my question that hasn't really been addressed is in terms of the experience from the older clear hold build areas, and have we actually seen an effective action against, I mean, if I say drugs lords or whatever criminality there may be, are we seeing the bosses being tackled as well as the people on the ground?
The answer, Chair, is I'm not aware of the bosses per se within those local communities, whether they live and exist within those communities. As Steve has indicated, there tends to be kind of a pyramid of hierarchical kind of control within the organised crime groups. So I'm not sure that it deals with it at that level, but it might provide the intelligence and information that then can go on to get the convictions. And clearly, when we're talking about the ROCU, the Regional Organised Crime Unit, and then building up the evidence for the convictions that they will do, because they that's the way they kind of operate. They need that access to those gangs and those groups, and this is one way of them doing that. So I'm not aware necessarily that one has led directly to the other, but it would make sense that it would.
Councillor Kashmi? And Councillor Barry?
Yeah, it was just touching on criminals going into property as a ways and means of laundering money. Is there any evidence that this is increasing, particularly with the increasing purchases of houses that are being remodelled as HMOs that come nowhere near the planning process, and planning doesn't require the owners of these houses to be, they don't have the fit and proper tests, so we're really reliant on intelligence that the crime unit gathers really about how people are operating, because obviously they're just setting themselves up, and the people that then tend to come in these houses, like 5 to 6 single, not related individuals, and I'm not talking about government placements here, I'm talking about entrepreneurs, criminals that are setting up. And the thing about that is the people within those houses, we don't know who they are, and they're hidden voices. They don't have a voice, and then people start complaining about them. And then how, you need perhaps put pressure on other agencies to be doing something around regulation that there should be when landlords shouldn't really be setting up and remodelling and housing and setting up support when there haven't been anywhere near enforcement, environmental health, or those things around safeguarding, and it's just a gap, and it's the growth of property being purchased for housing multiplication is rapidly on the increase at the moment throughout Lancashire, but it's just what evidence we got to say that there's criminal behaviour behind it.
I mean, yes, Chair. I mean, it's something that the police do constantly, is work with the local authorities, the housing associations, the landlords, to to monitor what is happening in terms of the renting of properties, to identify properties that might be of concern. And so this monitoring is ongoing all the time, and the relationship between the police and the local authorities, you know, and it's something that is developing, because clearly this isn't a new problem. This is something that's existed for quite a while. So through the relationships with the local authorities, we can identify kind of areas of concern, and you know, it's not like we've solely discovered this is happening. You know, it's something that that the police are aware of. They're working on it. They're working with the landlords, making sure that we can get informed as soon as possible where there are properties that might be at risk, and go into those properties and, you know, make sure that wherever they are, you know, they are cleared. You know, again, it's something that will go on. We just need that holistic approach. The police don't work in isolation. They work with the local authorities, and they work with the landlords and the community. If you've got a property you think is dubious, I would just urge anybody to report it in. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I mean, a lot of the councils are obviously bringing in Article 4 as well, the Article 4 directive, but I think one of the challenges as well that the police have got is accessing data for HMOs, and the rules around GDPR as well. And I think local authorities also, you know, whilst certain HMO, should we say, owners, such as Circle, for instance, can share some of that data with local authorities, they can't share that with the police. I think there's a gap there. So I think you've identified quite rightly there's a piece of work there that's more legislative, I would say, as well. But absolutely, the police are reliant on that reporting from local authorities, from stakeholders, other organisations at the moment. But just to highlight really that there is certainly a gap that I think the police identify as well, not being able to reach all these people.
Okay, any further questions on priority 3, getting tough on serious and violent crime? No? And final priority, Commissioner? Thank you.
Yeah, final one, Chair, rebuilding trust and confidence. Last but not least, because to me, trust and confidence is what it's all about. You know, we can measure crime stats going up and down, the numbers of police on the streets, whatever it might be, but actually the way people feel is what matters the most, and whether they are confident that they are getting a good service from the police, and whether if they need the police, they will be there for them. Really, really important. I've always said to me, it's standards that matter, but it's not just about the standards of behaviour, which is really important. It's about the standards of service that we deliver for the people of Lancashire. I identify within the report about social value investment, and that's an important part of what we do as well, the social value, you know, but it's in every single contract that we have as it comes up for renewal. We have social value. It's where we can make a real difference to local communities about using our spending power to invest as much as we can back in the community, and I think that should be an expectation the public have. I also identify within the report the whole range of committees that we have, because there is so much that's going on in terms, and there you've got the Audit Committee, Ethics Committee, the Violence Against Women and Girls, the Standard Scrutiny Committee, Stop and Search, custody, detention. So much work going on to ensure that we're delivering the right levels of service for the public, that it's important to have that outlined there. We also have the volunteers, that we have the independent custody visitors to make sure that when we have people coming in to custody being detained, that they're being given the right service, the right support, the quality on the conditions on meeting the standards that we would expect. And I also mentioned about pension forfeitures. It's not something that all commissioners will do, but in Lancashire, like I said, standards are really important. It's where you've got police officers that have misused their status of being a police officer and committed a crime within the course of their duty, and they are dismissed for that. We will pursue their pension afterwards, and that is significant. We will promote that as well to make sure that people know and police officers know that there are expectations on their behaviour that we in Lancashire absolutely expect those standards to be maintained. And so that's what it's about. It's about the trust and confidence, about the way people feel, about making sure that the service that we deliver gives value for money, gives proper protection, and that actually everybody within the organisation knows what is expected of them and what they have to deliver for the public.
Thank you, Commissioner. First question, Vice Chair, Councillor Berry.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions. My first question is on victims' satisfaction rates. I mean, it's good to see that victims of domestic abuse have a high level of satisfaction. It's over 80%. That is good, and I'm sure that reflects the high level of support they get from the police and other agencies. But one of the figure of concern on victims is the other victims of crime, where we're showing that that victim satisfaction has reduced from about 66% down to about 58% over the last year. And in fact, I think you will recall that the satisfaction rates were much higher years ago. They were 70 and 80%. So it's a downward trend, which must be of concern to yourself and to the police and the chief constable. Is it? I mean, as regards other victims, I mean, have we going into depth as to why the satisfaction rate is going down, and has it anything to do with are the police sort of contacting or calling on every victim of crime? Is that being neglected? Have you? What sort of investigation work have you done into confidence rates, particularly as they going down so quickly?
Okay, I'll defer to Richard here, sat next to me. He might be able to give you a more detailed answer than I can.
Absolutely, Councillor. So we also picked up on that in the Accountability Board, which will be in the minutes. So the reason being that was explained to us by the constabulary was that they've shifted the way they're recording their victim satisfaction statistics. So they've moved to an online survey. The anecdotal evidence from them is that when you do shift to an online survey, it inevitably leads to more negative results in the first instance. So that was the answer that they gave us. That is indicative of online surveys in general. So that is why. So we're using that as a new baseline based on that explanation. And going forward, we'll be monitoring it from that point because the old one, in effect, was based on a different system. So that's why that has gone down, according to the constabulary. So all I can assure you is that we'll monitor that throughout the accountability process going forward. In terms of specifics, I know there's force internal meetings where they do track those things in terms of what the breakdown is on a further level. We're not privy to that information. However, it's something that we can request if you so wish. We can have a look at that further.
A concern, isn't it? It must be a concern to everyone because, I mean, this is one of your priorities, that people do have satisfaction and confidence in the police, and I hope you will monitor it very carefully, as you've indicated. My other question was about something that you've not mentioned in your reports, is about the criminal justice system. I know you are involved in monitoring that. I mean, one of the questions that the panel has asked in the past is, you know, they reflected the concern of how long it was taking for trials to take place, especially those of serious crimes like rape and other crimes like that. I mean, from your conversations with those involved in the criminal, are you getting satisfaction that trials are happening a lot quicker? Because, you know, sort of justice delayed is justice denied, as they say. It is a matter, you know, must be awful for victims of serious crimes to be waiting such a long time for the case to be heard.
Yes, Chair. I mean, I actually chair the Lancashire Criminal Justice Board, and so I have conversations with all the partners and all the agencies within Lancashire involved in the criminal justice system. There is pressure on the system, as we know. I've got to say, I think we're better placed in Lancashire than you'll find in other parts of the country. I'm not saying everything's ideal, because it isn't. And where you will find one problem within the system and then you work hard to alleviate that, it seems to unlock the logjam that just gets kind of pushes it further along to somewhere else. So from our perspective, what we're trying to do is look at a holistic approach from start to finish, all the agencies involved, how we can then look at the journey through the criminal justice system, who are the real people that can make a difference within those organisations themselves. Sometimes it can be people that record, it can be just people that support the victims. You know, there can be a number of, you know, sometimes it can be whether we've got enough defence barristers or solicitors. You know, there are areas within the system that shortages then create a blockage. So you want that holistic approach from start to finish, so that if you're looking at it, where can we put the resources that will make that difference? Because otherwise, all you're doing is making a little change here, and you're not solving the problem. We're all aware of the frustration, and you know, we've talked before about the way that, in particularly the Crown Court works, and the Crown Court who lists several cases for each court every day, because of the system being that so many people plead guilty on the day. They're waiting to see whether the victim turns up. If the victim turns up, they'll plead guilty. That'll get shifted. They'll get time off the sentence for the guilty plea. But all the work and all the effort has got to go in place to every single one of those cases to get it to there on the day, even if it doesn't go ahead. And probably 80% of those cases don't go ahead, but you've still got to make the assumption that it does. So we're looking at the use of technology, the use of AI, for where that can provide support as well. So there's lots of areas that we're trying to improve that will provide support, and particularly, I think, the concern would be for the victims of rape, sexual abuse, those kind of offences that are really emotive, that you want to take priority on the day. You don't want to have somebody that has to relive whatever abuse they've been through, have it to build up, to go to court, and then to be told that it's not going to be seen, will come back in 6 months' time. You know, we can't be allowing that, because absolutely, you know, the words you used, justice delayed is justice denied is absolutely the case. Because what the perpetrator is hoping for is hoping that by attrition, you'll wear the victim down. You'll wear the victim down and they'll have gone through so much that they won't turn up. And if they don't turn up, bingo, you get off with it. And we can't have that. And so through the work we're doing, we're absolutely involved in all the agencies. We're trying to make sure wherever the log jams are, we get them shifted, but it's a whole system approach that we need to look at.
Councillor Marino? No. Councillor Whip?
Thank you, Chair. Two questions, if I may. First of all, your report highlights the construction of the new operating centre in Nelson, and I've asked before about the implications for police stations elsewhere in Pendle, and notably Colne Police Station, where that is effectively the headquarters in Pendle. What's going to happen to the access to police in Colne following the completion of the new centre at Nelson?
Turn it off. Sure. With the new police station, once it's open, there will be a front counter that people can go to at the new station. I know that doesn't answer the question about Colne Station. I don't think a formal decision has been taken around the future of Colne Station yet for what that could be used for in the future. But once it has, I will make sure that Council Whip is made aware.
Thank you, Chair. Well, can I just preface my second question with a plea that the residents of Colne are considered as part of those deliberations, because to have their access to policing completely withdrawn, I think would be unacceptable. And I appreciate there will be police on the ground, but actually being able to have a physical presence, bricks and mortar. My second question is rather different. In the reports to the Accountability Board, there's reference to His Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary Peel report, and there were 8 areas for improvement that were identified as part of that. In terms of issues remaining to be resolved, there's the multi-agency safeguarding hubs, domestic violence disclosures, and antisocial behaviour recording. What action are you taking, Commissioner, in terms of monitoring progress to meet these areas for improvement, and actually ensuring that there is real improvement in areas where the constabulary were found to be weak?
Chair, on the first point, what I will say is that the investment in a new police facility within Pendle will actually improve policing within Pendle. Significant investment within the community and the ability of police officers to get out and deliver support. So I would disagree that the people of Colne will be left without policing, because clearly they won't. So the only issue really is around the front counter and actually the access to that front counter and how much that front counter within Colne is being used now. However, as I said earlier, once we make a formal decision around the police station there, we can inform Council Whip. In terms of the appeal and the areas for improvement, it's absolutely what we do as the Accountability Board, and my job as Commissioner is to look at the recommendations from Peel, from the HMIC, to have a look at absolutely what actions need to be taken to make the improvements with the MASH, with the domestic abuse recording, with the antisocial behaviour. All those areas are absolutely, having the improvement plan in place to make sure, and we have an ongoing, every meeting that we will be discussing these very things to make sure that we are back on track. I welcome the HMIC and the inspections that they bring in to Lancashire, because I think it is always good to have different eyes coming in that can compare the work that's going on within Lancashire to the other police forces. It means that we're not complacent, where we think we're doing a good job. If somebody else comes in and says to us there's ways that we can do that work better, that's what I want to know, because I want to make sure we're delivering the best service for the people of Lancashire. Some of these areas, such as the MASH, the areas of concern that have been raised by the HMIC aren't directly the responsibility of the police. It's kind of again, partnership kind of work. But where it is identified, we need to make sure, even if it is a partnership approach, that everything is in place. So that's what we do. I always look forward to what the outcomes of the inspections, and I use them to drive the performance and to drive the services within Lancashire. And that's what we'll do. I don't know, Richard, whether you can add to what I've said.
Of course, Councillor Whip. So just to explain, obviously here that report will be received by proxy in effect, but we also have the Joint Independent Audit Committee that keep an eye on HMIC progress in terms of addressing the recommendations. That's a joint committee with Constabulary. Obviously the Accountability Board, but we also observe within the governance team a number of internal constabulary meetings, so we literally see those conversations taking place about what they're going to do to address the AFIs, the areas for improvement, and that gives us assurance that we can provide to Clive and obviously raise any issues if there are any, but of course there haven't been so far. And I personally as well attend the HMIC board, so I actually see where those decisions get made. Again, if there was anything of concern, I'd raise that with Clive. And we have an apparatus in the office to collect that evidence from those meetings, so we have a sort of audit trail of what we understand is taking place to address those areas for improvement. And I think going forward as well, one of the ambitions that we do have is to be able to, on a data hub that we're going to be producing soon, hopefully be launched this year, where you'll be able to see some of that progress, how we've actually collated that throughout the year, just making sure that those things are actually taking place that they say are taking place. So there's quite a robust governance around HMIC.
Chair, can I just pursue this issue of access to neighbourhood policing and the context? I think all police stations have facilities where officers can brief on via Teams, and by having a centralised briefing on place, you could see neighbourhood officers actually briefing on at Nelson, and then spending 25 minutes, half an hour of their shift moving to where they're actually policing within the community. So if you were actually, if the constabulary were using the police stations, the bricks and mortar police stations, for briefing on in the locality that they are policing, rather than going to a central location, you effectively get more time boots on the ground than if they're all coming out of a central location and then travelling to the neighbourhoods that they're policing. So would you take this up with the Chief Constable, and through your responsibilities as being responsible for the estate, the structures that the police use, will you be making every effort to ensure that there will be a continued presence in Colne and the other communities in Pendle that will perhaps see their police stations disappear.
Chair, I do have responsibility for the estate, but I don't have responsibility for operational policing, and the decision around where the police officers have their briefings each morning is an operational one. Like I said, I think a formal decision around Colne Station hasn't been made, so I don't want to preempt that at this moment in time. But certainly all aspects of how we can deliver the best possible service for the people of Pendle, Nelson, Colne and the wider Pendle area will be taken into consideration. That is what we're aiming to achieve. That is why we're putting such a big investment into Pendle to have the new facility that will deliver policing, modern policing, going forward as efficiently as possible.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner.
I was just going to say that the Police and Crime Commissioner gave an interview in January where he basically said Colne Station was going to shut. So I think that's a given. I think the problem we had with Nelson and Colne police stations was the cost of refurbishment was throwing good money after bad. The cost of heating, the cost of everything needed to keep those buildings going was more than the cost of investing in them. So I think that's done and dusted.
It certainly would be an expectation. I don't think a formal decision has been taken, but I think the point that was made during that interview is around the cost of maintaining both Nelson and Colne stations. We have one budget, we have one lot of money, and so it is about how do we use that money to keep the police force going, to give them the facilities they need, but also to have bases within the local area. And it may well be that either Colne Police Station or something else that can be used as a base, as a drop-in for neighbourhood policing, something like that that can be found. But as a building and the cost, I think the point that was made then around the cost of keeping the building going and the maintenance cost and the refurbishment that's required, it just makes it prohibitive. And like I said, when it comes down to those decisions on the future, then it is, like you said, those are what you look at. You look at the financial cost and how you can deliver the best possible service.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there any further questions on priority 4, rebuilding public trust and confidence from members? No. Just one point on that, but Lincoln overall is just around, and it's more around the actual construction of the report. If we could just make a small request that if there are links to a number of different offshoot meetings, committees, panels, if possible, if the agendas and the minutes could be attached as an appendix, only because we're obviously the makeup of the police and crime panel is operating from 15 different council technologies, so sometimes it's difficult when you're clicking on a link, it takes you out of the apps, so it's quite a small point, but it will be helpful for members if it could be included as an appendix, and also if minutes from any of those meetings might be available, because I know some of the meetings have taken place in July, August, but draft minutes just aren't available yet. If they could be available, that would also be helpful rather than just the agenda. But if members, I think we've captured that point. I've had some feedback from members on that. Okay, if there's no further questions, the recommendation is to consider that report. I think that's been considered in great detail, and I'd just like to thank the Commissioner and the Commissioner's office, because there was a number of requests from the last meeting around detail and information, and I think it's been very forthcoming. We asked for it in advance, and we've had a good sight of it, and we've had a good conversation on it today, so thank you very much. Okay. That is item 6 done. Item 7, Police and Crime Commissioner's decisions. Possibly a quicker report.
Chair, they are just listed their decisions. If take any questions, if anybody has any.
They're noted. Thank you, panel. And then it's back to panel business. Commissioner and staff, you're welcome to stay for the last few minutes while we go through the rest of the agenda. Item number 8, panel budget.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's a very brief report in relation to the panel budget. So we have now submitted the final budget for 24-25 to Home Office, and that's some details there. Again, as you can see, we didn't spend the whole allocated amount, but we did actually, we did actually submit what did the expense that was actually properly incurred.
Okay. Panel happy with the panel budget for the year?
Yep.
Great. Okay. Item number 9 is task and finish groups. We are expecting a final report from rural crime, but the chief authors have both sent their apologies to today's meeting, so we'll deal with that at the next meeting. Okay. Complaints update. No complaints have been received. Right, 10. Urgent business, item number 11. I have none to raise. And item number 12, we will see you on the 24th of November at 4 p.m. Thank you all for attending. Thank you, Commissioner.